I'm gonna pause really quick. My daughter is trying to talk to me. Hey everyone, my name is Julia. This is the YouTube series on being biracial, and today joining me is Celeste Ryan. Hey Celeste.
Hey Julia, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
So we're going to be talking about the biracial experience and what it's like to be a biracial person. And I kind of want to give some background to our viewers of where this started. And I think what really spurred me to want to do this is your Facebook post, actually. Do you want to talk a little bit about what inspired you to, put a post out on Facebook just about being biracial, especially in a time where we're seeing a lot of racial injustice happening and a lot of people talking about it, and where biracial people can sometimes feel in between the conversation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So after George Floyd's murder, every time that there's one of these big police brutality situations, and it obviously just brings up so many feelings. I mean, for all of us, like as a, collective. But I think for me, there's also always been this like weird twinge of like, I don't know where I fit in this. Like I feel all the grief of it, and I feel all the sadness of why are brown bodies treated this way, and why, like, how is that okay? Like I feel all that injustice and anger, but I never felt like I knew where to go with it, because I always felt like in the Black community and with even my Black family members, there was always this sense of like, you don't really get it, like you can talk about it, but you don't fully understand because you're not really a part of us. And then I also couldn't really talk to like my white family members or friends about it because they didn't understand it in the same way as being a part of that community and watching that happen, to someone who looks like them. So it just always felt like this weird in between of, I don't know where to go with these emotions and this anger. And I decided to just write about that. That was really, yeah, it was just like, I'm just going to say, this is my experience. I'm going to say what my experience has been of, this is how I'm feeling. And it's hard and it's weird, but at the same time, like validating the experience of me as a Black woman, because I am biracial and half of that is Black, and so I experienced that and I grew up in that. And even though I don't fully understand, and I'll never fully understand what it's like to be a Black woman, that's still half of me, so I think it came out of that place of like a lot of emotions and processing, and I tend to write when I'm processing things. So yeah, that's where it came from.
Can you tell me a little bit, just kind of like, what is it like growing up as a biracial person?
For sure. I think for me, growing up biracial was really confusing. Yeah, I grew up in a home where it wasn't really something we talked about. Well, and I also had a single mom. So my mom is Black, my dad is white. And they divorced when I was one. So I grew up in a primarily Black household, but it wasn't really something that we talked about. I think where my mom was in her racial identity development, it just wasn't a conversation that we had. And then when I did try to talk about it, I think it was really hard for her. So I just learned pretty young, just not to ask about it, not to talk about it. And then we lived closest to, well, because I was with my Black mom, I really only had connection with the Black side of my family, and so we lived really close to them. And then she got married to another white man, and so then I had this like strange, just both, like I don't really know how to describe it, but I always remember, I think the distinct thing I think about with my childhood in regards to being biracial was this constant feeling of, if the other side knew how I acted with this side, they wouldn't accept me. Like it was just like both. Like I felt like the Black side of my family wouldn't accept me if they saw me with the white side, and the white side wouldn't accept me if they saw me with the Black side. It was just this constant, like if they knew how I was, they wouldn't love me. And so, yeah, I think that's like really, for me, it's always been a struggle to like bridge that gap. Like I feel like I've just stood in the middle of not really knowing how to like bridge those two. Yeah. And then when I was a little bit older, 11 or so, we moved away from the Black side of my family, and so we're really only with the white side. And so then after 11, I feel like I became really disconnected from the Black side of my family and the Black side of me as a result. And so yeah, I feel like that was a lot, and that was a lot of my experience after that, was just really feeling out of touch with that part of my identity, and that part of my family, because they all are scattered around the country now. So Yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah, that's interesting that like the first half of your life growing up was like in one culture slash community and the other one was in the other half. And both of those are you at the same time.
For sure. Yeah. It made it really confusing for me.
So I feel like a lot of biracial people get mistaken for like other races. So I'm kind of curious, like when people meet you, what do they guess that you are or
Oh,
ask?
for sure. I feel like the most common one is Hispanic. Like I'll just have people ask me in Spanish, "Do you speak Spanish?" And I understand, I took high school Spanish, so I can say no, like I don't speak Spanish. I mean, yeah, just a little bit, but I've been asked if I'm Brazilian. That's a pretty common one actually. Yeah, I feel like those are really yeah, just some kind of like Hispanic, Latina, or Brazilian, or people have asked me if I'm mixed. Yeah.
How does it make you feel like when they automatically like are interested in what your ethnicity is?
I think when I was younger, it was a reminder that I was different. And so I hated it. Like, it was just kind of like when you're just existing in the world, not really thinking about where you fit and how you belong. And then suddenly someone reminds you that you don't. Like, it's just this very strange experience. And so I resented it a lot. Like, I resented the question a lot for a long time. I think now it's something I appreciate. And I appreciate the conversations that come as a result of it being asked. So, yeah. And actually, I feel like now I get asked a lot less. Like, I don't know if it's just like where we are now as a nation, that that's just not a question you ask anymore. Because I feel like I used to get asked that a lot. I don't know if that's been your experience too, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like being in the professional world, people may know that that's just not like very acceptable. Although I've gotten that question in the office a lot of times,
Really.
and people try to ask it in the nicest way possible. They're like, "You just have this glow to you. Like what are you?"
I love that. I'm a human. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm just curious, what is your earliest race related memory? When did you first realize like race exists?
For sure. Um, hmm. I remember asking my mom, so she was a single mom, and I remember asking her, she was dating a white man, and I just kind of asked her, like, why are you, like, he doesn't look the same as you, like, why, we just had a conversation. I think that was the first time I really noticed it, or asked a question about it. Yeah, yeah, that was, I mean, just that, I would say that conversation was the first time that it was really something that got brought up, and I brought it up, so yeah.
So in the same way, you've got how many kids now?
3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is race something that you guys talk about?
Yeah, a little bit. It's so my daughter turns 4 tomorrow, and then 2 and a newborn. And the 4-year-old last summer. So that's something that's really interesting is just, I mean, yeah, genes in general. And so my oldest is dark, like really dark. She's almost as dark as I am. Well, is as dark as I am. And right now, because it's summer, she's a lot darker than me actually. And then the middle one is literally blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin. Like, she's does not look biracial at all. And so I remember last summer when my oldest was 3, she asked me, like, or she kind of looked at herself, and then she looked at Lila, my middle child, and she's like, "Mom, like, I'm brown and you're brown, but Lila's white and Daddy's white." And it was just so interesting to kind of have that conversation of like, yeah, that's true. And so, and actually shortly after that, we met another brown boy, is what she called. She was like, "You're brown like me," and so then it just became a kind of conversation of, yeah, like people have different skin colors, and that's awesome. And so now we have our newborn who's just 6 weeks old, and she's also brown. So that's just been kind of like a fun, yeah, thing. So we haven't talked, I mean, just because they're pretty young, we haven't talked necessarily about like the implications of race, just more, yeah, God made people different colors, and that's something to celebrate and be excited about. So yeah.
I like highlighted this question about dating as a biracial person, and I said that you can share if you want to, but if you don't want to, we don't have to go that route.
um I can talk about it. Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit.
So what was your experience like?
With dating, growing up in mostly white normative cultures, it was something I felt really insecure about. I have definitely like heard the words, like I don't date Black girls. And though I remember just feeling, because I have never really fully identified as Black, I've always identified as biracial. So just that feeling of like, but I'm not even, like I am half Black, but that's not, yeah, just feeling very not seen, first of all. And then also just the feelings of, yeah, being in a culture where white is beautiful and brown is not as beautiful, just constantly having this feeling of I will never be as beautiful as other women. And yeah, like that was, it sucks. Like it's really, really hard to constantly feel that comparison. And there's also this weird like layer too of like exoticsness. I'm trying to think of the word of like not, yeah, I feel like there's also were guys who are like, oh, you're a Black girl and you're really pretty. Like I feel like it was like, oh, you're really pretty for a Black girl. Like I heard that a lot too. And it's like, I don't like that either. Yeah, it just was hard for sure in general to date as a biracial woman.
Do you feel like there is some privilege that comes with being like a Black person with light skin?
Oh my goodness, yes. I've tried to explain this to people, and that's almost something I feel a lot of shame about. Where, yeah, it's like I have the like exoticness of being Black, but like the lighter skin, and so I almost feel like I'm more acceptable to white people. And because of that, I mean, it's kind of like the like Halle Berry or like Rashida Jones factor, where it's like, oh, they're just like really beautiful, lighter skin, tan women. Like, and yeah, there's just like this weirdness. I don't know, that I've always kind of felt that. And I remember I've asked other lighter skinned Black people, like, do you feel like there's a privilege of having lighter skin? And they've definitely agreed, like, yes. And it's weird, like it feels really uncomfortable.
Sure. I feel like sometimes that's where the statement comes where they're like, you're not that Black. And I start to,
Yes.
what does that mean? I'm not that Black. Is it
Right.
just my skin color or is it the way I talk, dress?
Right. I've just started asking that question, like, what does that mean to you? Like, it makes them so uncomfortable because then they have to like acknowledge, like, oh, what does Black mean to me? Yeah.
My next question has to do with like which side of your race do you feel like you identify with more?
Yeah, I think I've always grown up outside of like once my mom got remarried, I would say I've always grown up in like white normative culture. So like my house was pretty white normative. And then my high school, my town was very, very white. Like we were one of like 10 Black people families. So like even I couldn't even think of interracial couples or families in our town. A total side note, but I didn't meet another mixed person until college. Like it literally took me, because like I didn't know that there were other people that were mixed like me. I thought I was alone in the world. So I would say probably the white side is just what my culturally what I've experienced more. But I think as I've gotten older, I'm now view myself as biracial. Like it's just, yeah, just kind of accepting both sides. Yeah.
What would you tell like your 8-year-old self about being a biracial person? Like,
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't even know.
I could rephrase it as like, what would you tell people, like a young woman who's maybe like confused by being two races at
Sure,
once?
sure. I probably give herself grace, like just let herself figure it out and that she doesn't have to fit into either one. And that it honestly is like a very, I don't know if this has been your experience, but for me, it's been a very lonely road because I don't know anyone else who's experienced being biracial in the exact same way that I have. Because we're all from different families. Like each family experiences it differently. Even in my own family, my siblings have a different experience than I do. My siblings all identify as white and they're equally as Black as I am. And so I can't even talk to them about my experience of being biracial. So yeah, so I think just like really extending so much grace to yourself, finding mentors, that's something I wish I had done sooner. And still I'm trying to seek out actively, just like finding Black women who can speak into my life and also white women who can speak into my life. And hopefully someday I hope to find a biracial woman who's older than me, that can just like be a mentor to me. And yeah, I would tell her to learn as much about her hair as she can, and that her hair is
Oh, yeah.
beautiful. Because I mean, I literally didn't know anyone with hair like mine. I thought it was just ugly. I thought that, and everybody was like, your hair's so curly, it's so pretty. And now am like, oh, I love my hair, and I want to raise daughters who love their curls and love their thick hair. But it took me so many years, like so many years of straightening chemically and with flat irons. And yeah, just want to remind her that she's beautiful, and that it's lonely and hard, but we we'll figure it out. And yeah, and I feel like I'm still figuring it out too. Yeah, so that's where the grace comes in.
Yeah, hair. Oh my goodness. That is like such a big thing. Especially I feel like young women who may be trying to fit in at school, or like just trying to figure out like society's standard of beauty, and like how they can be beautiful as a woman who has hair that is like nobody else. And like looking in the natural hair section, like which of these products apply to my hair?
Totally. You asked the question, are there any benefits to being biracial? And something that I had a Black man say to me once, who was a pastor, he kind of said to me, he was like, because you're biracial, you like have the eyes to see both sides. He's like, I'm a Black man, I can only understand the Black experience, but you as a biracial woman can say, I understand the Black experience and I understand the white experience. And that gives you like the empathy and the heart to be able to like bridge the gap between the two. So he just kind of like spoke into me as a biracial woman that I have the opportunity to be a reconciler. And that was something that was really impactful for me. I'd never thought about it that way, about how, like, I think I just always viewed it as like, I'm not a part of either group, but he like spoke the truth of, you're a part of both, and you can speak into both and explain both sides in a way that maybe can bring reconciliation. And that was really freeing, and I really appreciated that truth that he spoke into me.
So it is a blessing in some ways.
Oh, it definitely was. Yeah. And I was I had never thought, I like was like weeping. It's like, oh, that's so beautiful. Because it just was, it was just a really, really cool way to think about it. So yeah.
Cool. Well, I know you're a busy woman, so I'm going to let you go, but I'm just going to sign off, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Julia.